All right, everyone, we're going to skip all talk of the playoffs because I'm from New York and Alexa's from Cleveland. We're going to get right into it today. Welcome back to Write That Down. This is the podcast where we talk about the legal, social, and sometimes deeply unspoken dynamics behind the way people actually live together. Today, parents, we're talking to you. We're getting into something that most people treat like routine administrative formality, but it's a pretty significant financial relationship. We're talking about Guarantor because for a lot of people, college students, recent grads, and young renters in cities like New York and Cleveland, getting that first apartment feels like independence. And I get it. You sign the lease, you move in with your friends, you decorate the place, you have an aesthetic, you build the version of an adult life that feels entirely your own. But behind a huge number of those apartments is another person carrying all the financial risk. A parent, a grandparent, a sibling, a family friend, someone who is making, I think it's in New York, you have to make 40 times your rent. Tor has to make 80 times your rent.
And that's yearly.
That's
right?
yearly. What makes this dynamic so interesting is that the people assuming that risk often have no control over the household decisions being made because they are not part of the household. So today we're talking about the guarantor trap, why your kid's roommate might actually become your problem, what guarantors are really agreeing to, and how roommate conflict can very quickly become financial conflict for you. Most people, in my view, treat guarantor agreements very casually. Yeah, sure, I'll just sign. Legally, they're extremely serious contracts. If there is a default on the rent, the landlord is not coming for the people that live in that apartment. They're coming for you. So a guarantor is not a backup. You don't pay your rent, they're going to your guarantor first. Many guarantors are exposed and sometimes don't even know it. There was an article several years ago in the New York Times about a friend that had signed on to be the guarantor of her friend's apartment 20 years ago, and the friend just kept renewing the lease. Now, in some apartment buildings, you just are the guarantor for the initial term. In other apartment buildings, you are the guarantor until you are no longer the guarantor. You have to pull yourself off of that, or they have to put someone else down, or they have to say, I don't need a guarantor. And when this person who was the guarantor had a falling out with her friend, the friend wouldn't show her the new lease. So she didn't know if she was still a guarantor. And then this friend was out of work. She had no idea if they were paying the rent. She had no idea if she was legally on the hook for it. I don't necessarily think you always understand the risk when you sign on to be a guarantor. And it's not wild to me because I understand how that happens. I want my kid, my friend, my grandchild to have the best. They are in college. Obviously, they're not making 40 to 50 times their rent. I'll sign on. Okay. I hope everyone's paying. I think it's a trap because people don't recognize that. Another thing that you see a lot is the parents or the guarantors are not reading the lease structure because they're not signing the lease. The roommates, the cohabitators, the co-livers, they're signing the lease. The parents, grandparents, what have you, are simply signing on to guarantee it. So you're in a situation where these roommate arrangements, because that's what they are emotionally organized and not legally organized. But the guarantor is signing a legal agreement to be financially responsible for this emotional structure. So I think that people think that they are helping their kid qualify for an apartment, and you want what's best for your kids, your grandkids, friends. But in reality, they're underwriting an entire household. And it could be people they don't know, but you are now legally and financially responsible for them.
So I think we should also discuss the roommate that you never vetted, right? Spicy. And this is very common, right? When parents are vetting colleges, right? They're very engaged with their kids and taking an interest in kids' internships, their study abroad programs, all kinds of opportunities at such a pivotal and really exciting point in their kids' lives, but often they know nothing about the people that their kid lives with. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They might know their dorm room freshman roommates from move-in day. You get to know them, you meet their parents. It's a really exciting time, right? Move-in day. I don't know if you still remember move-in day for you.
I remember move-in day.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because you've got the boyfriend, right? You've got three girls renting an apartment, right? One starts dating someone, okay? And he slowly moves in. He's there every night, okay? And he uses the utilities. Maybe he's taking up a bunch of the common space. Maybe he's on the couch all the time. Maybe he's using the living room TV to watch the games.
Maybe he's eating the gluten-free Oreos.
Maybe he's eating the gluten-free Oreos or drinking all of their legally purchased beer. Who knows? He creates so much tension. And he's created so much tension before it even bubbles up to the surface, right? He breaks something expensive during a party, okay? Maybe the girls didn't even know they were throwing a party. He invited some friends over and it just snowballed, okay? Then that one girl, she breaks up with her boyfriend. Maybe he didn't take the news so well and he pulls a Chad, Kyle, whatever, and punches a hole in the wall on his way out.
We're not singling out Chads and Kyles. It's colloquial examples here.
Strictly. Either way, he damages the property on his way out. So security deposit issues ensue.
Yeah.
And everyone starts...
It was her boyfriend. It's her problem. We all live here.
Pointing fingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
The landlord doesn't care whose boyfriend it was. The landlord doesn't care that it was anyone's boyfriend. The landlord, as far as they're concerned, says it's one of you three girls. It's your problem, which ultimately it's the landlord's issue to take it out of the security deposit of you three girls, which is typically one pot that was paid. So neither does the lease guarantors.
No.
I mean, at the end of the
Nothing
day.
in there.
And then there's the vanish. This one is so very New York City. That face, Hilary.
Because I think I know where this is going.
I think you do too. So one roommate quietly moves out mid-lease, doesn't formally sublet. They don't continue paying consistently. They just assume everyone else will figure it out until rent is late. Suddenly, parents who have never even met each other. There was no move-in college day, the dorms, meet cute moment for them. They're arguing over Venmo screenshots and text messages.
Mm-hmm. They're arguing over the receipts.
The receipts, or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've also got the rich roommate problem. So when we talked about Sue from Modern Family,
yeah,
and her roommate kept saying, you can pay me for your half.
Yeah, she was like, I got a new TV. It was on sale. You can just pay me back later. It's $150.
And the Taylor Swift tickets.
Oh my God, the Taylor Swift. My dad's business manager got us Taylor Swift concert tickets. Like, you can just pay me back later.
Get me your half later. This one gets very socially interesting. And we've actually talked about this topic before. Where when you come, I think we talked about this from the perspective of the shared trip and sharing your finances. Right. When the group trip makes it out of the group chat, right? And you're like, why? Well, some of them, right? Some of them with certain people. And you're like, ooh.
Lesson learned. Informal debts.
Informal debts. Just put it on my tab, rack it up.
With 20% compounding interest daily after 20 days.
That's the thing. Girl's going to get her bag one way or another.
Every time. Oh, I'm going to get paid.
I think the big issue here is when you look at money differently and you value a dollar differently, and you come from a different perspective on money and spending habits, it can create a real difference of point of view and perspective overall. So let's say one roommate comes from serious money, okay? And another doesn't. The spending expectations become wildly different. There's this expectation that one can spend as they usually have, no problem, no judgment, but the unspoken expectation off the bat that someone else can keep up. And that's where things can get really problematic. Furniture, cleaning services, utilities, weekends away, weekend plans, parties, groceries, streaming services, whatever it might be. One person treats the apartment like a luxury hotel. Another is panicking over Con Ed bills. And a lot of roommate conflict isn't actually about personality. It's about invisible financial assumptions.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize that the guarantors aren't really out of it. You
No.
know, they are financially exposed. They are usually emotionally invested in what's happening, especially if it's a parent or a sibling or a grandparent, because they're going to hear about it. So you've now guaranteed this lease and all you're hearing about are the problems. Claire's not someone I know. This is not a true story. Claire's boyfriend moved in. And as a parent, you're like, well, no, like the lease was for 4 girls or 3 girls. Who's this guy? So you're financially exposed, you're emotionally invested, but you are operationally completely excluded. So you're liable for everything that's happening financially, but you have no control. And that's the trap. So I think it's really important for guarantors to see that they can end up being legally responsible for decisions that they had no role in making. The apartment belongs socially to the kids, but financially, there are invisible adults sitting at the table. And there are so many things that people, and we say this in a lot of our episodes, don't talk about. The questions nobody asks. In a guarantor situation, if you're not in college, it's a first apartment. What happens if a roommate loses a job? What's the game plan? If you're in college, what happens if someone studies abroad? I studied abroad my junior year. Now I lived on campus, so colleges are very clever. You are still paying for your semester at your school. You're just paying an additional fee to go elsewhere. There was no guarantor in a dorm. But what if you live off campus and your roommate's going to study abroad? Who's covering that rent? Can someone move out early because they're leaving school or because they got a job in a different city? Can someone's partner or significant other effectively move in? What happens if there's damage? Who's responsible? How are utilities going to be split? What if one person's parents are paying and the others aren't? What if someone stops paying but continues to live there, basically a squatter? And that's, I think, where the roommate agreements come in very handy, because none of these questions are answered in a lease. Without a roommate agreement, that is the only documentation you have. Most roommates, especially now, and we see it all the time, because we all see the Instagrams and the TikToks, most roommates are going to discuss aesthetics before they discuss liability.
Absolutely. Speaking of social media, the social media version of adulthood, young adulthood is increasingly performative, right? Apartments become identity, status, social currency. But financially, a lot of these arrangements are so fragile. It's really about where you live, what building you're in, big your place is, all of these things. But some people are living in apartments they emotionally identify as theirs, but legally couldn't sustain for 2 months by themselves. That's where we see the need for roommate agreements that are that missing piece.
Yeah. And I think it's important, and I never want to sound like a broken record.
No.
And I know that lawyers, we tend to, especially when we have like a point to be made and we want you to protect yourself. Roommate agreements are not pessimistic. Cohabitation agreements are not unromantic. None of these agreements are distrustful.
The same way that asking for a guarantor isn't distrustful or pessimistic. It's someone saying,
You
you
have
know,
no real credit history and
you
you're
are.
18.
Exactly.
Their expectation management.
Sure. I completely agree. Most conflict really doesn't happen. We've talked about this before in our Roommates from Hell or the Roommate Breakdown episode. Most conflict doesn't actually happen because people are evil. It happens because expectations are never aligned clearly in the first place.
There's so many things people don't think about, like the roommate that gets the emotional support animal mid-lease without discussing it with anybody, including the landlord.
And
I know
not a knock on emotional support animal.
never. I mean,
Never.
you'll never meet 2 people that are more into that. But I know someone who has an emotional support rabbit that requires its own room.
I'm sorry, will you repeat that for me?
I know someone who has an emotional support rabbit that requires its own room.
Like bedroom.
Yes, a bedroom.
Okay.
Full disclosure, I'm a dog girly through and through. My husband is allergic to dogs. And on our first date, I told him a dog was non-negotiable for me.
As it should be.
He has to take like a spray type thing every day to build up his tolerance, because I told him that next spring, with or without his input, we're getting a dog. Like, I'm designing my kitchen around a dog eating station, and I'm having them put a dog bath in the laundry room.
Spritz, spritz, Scotty.
Spritz, spritz. Spritz, spritz. I don't know if you ever saw that episode of Two Broke Girls, but there's one where they're trying to be cleaning ladies, and the boss of the company is like, she's too spritz, 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 spritz. Just made me think of that. But I've never owned a rabbit. And
heard
I
great
know people
things.
that have, and they're very cute,
They're
and
very
I
cute.
get it. But they also require pellets and hay and stuff.
Room to hop. Maybe not
Yes.
their own room.
So when someone gets an emotional support animal or just a pet mid-lease without discussing it with the roommates, with the landlord, with anybody, there's allergies. There can be damage to the home or the apartment. There can be noise complaints. And now everyone in the apartment is suddenly on ChatGPT and Google becoming an amateur housing attorney. And
Yeah.
if you want harmonious living, that is not the route to take.
No. And I think one of the more relatable examples is probably, rather than the bunny, I got to tell you, that was,
I'm sorry, I think the bunny was super relatable, but okay.
I just don't know how common that is. It sounds like a real predicament. I am not going to say that it's not an issue. That sounds like a top tier, grade A, world class issue.
So emotional support animals come in all different species.
Yes, they do. I'm saying the bunny was a new one.
Agreed. It needs to be discussed, and there should be an agreement in place for the process of how that discussion goes before the
Just
guarantor ends up liable for whatever bunny disasters happen.
Oh, no bunny disasters, please.
No promises.
Or when the guarantor is on the hook for the subletter, the roommate that decides to spend the summer abroad and unofficially sublets to a stranger from Instagram. Nobody checks with the landlord. Nobody checks with the guarantor, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just grateful, first of all, that the stranger from Instagram is not dangerous and is
The psychopath.
right. And we've all seen that show on Netflix.
Yes, we have.
My Roommate from Hell.
Worst roommate ever.
We could
It
keep
is
going.
terrifying.
We could keep going. However, not to say that all situations where someone decides to live with a stranger and be paired up that way, we understand. Obviously, there is a real need for people to live with roommates, right?
Mhm.
But let's say the person ends up being a nightmare, and we've said this before and we'll say it again. Ultimately, the landlord does not care whoever caused whatever issue in the apartment or possibly in the building. Whatever area that the lease binds the tenants to, the guarantor is still on the hook.
Yes. And then you have the parent group chat. And I'm not talking about the fun one that talks about lacrosse games and ball and hockey and what's going on in school this week. When the kids stop communicating effectively, and now the parents are communicating directly. And no matter what the situation, somehow it makes everything exponentially worse.
That's when those Venmo screenshots or lack thereof, those receipts
come in.
they start getting exchanged for being asked.
Well, my
for.
kid said that your kid did this and your kid's boyfriend punched a hole in the wall and we're not paying for it. And
No, you want to be asking about things like, when are you guys coming to visit? We'd love to do that kind of thing. You want to get lucky. We're not saying you need to be friends with everyone. We are saying,
Right.
if nothing else, there should be respect and a clear channel of communication, especially when you are on the hook for what goes on at 123 Easy Street. For a lot of families, becoming a guarantor feels like a small administrative step.
Mhm.
It is the next step in helping your kids, your friend, or your sibling move to the next stage in life. Actually, a financial relationship built almost entirely on trust and assumptions and ultimately incomplete conversations. I like to personally think about this as being a cosigner.
Right.
And when those assumptions break down, the fallout usually isn't just legal, it's personal. That's the
Mhm.
guarantor trap. If you need to take the yearly rent that is your child's half or third and put a multiplier on it, just in case the roommate or roommates were to do something, or their significant other or their friend were to do something,
Mm-hmm.
that would cost you, well, cost your child and ultimately you. If you would not put your name as a cosigner on a credit card with that limit, think twice about being a guarantor before you know who they're living with and how they live.
Or at least before you get something in writing.
Right. Before you go into it blindly without taking a look at the lease, what is in it, and who's on it.
Yeah.
This is Write That Down. We'll be back next week. Until then, we're here to remind you, as always, it's not about who you live with, it's about how you live together.